All right. Good morning to any replayers, if you're a replayer. Don't forget you can still participate if you tap on the screen for hearts. You can share this broadcast. You can, of course, find me on Twitter or Snapchat. If you have any questions for me, or any questions in general about money, numbers, decisions, and to anybody who's joining or able to join. Let's see. Hello, just fresh out of the workout, because if you want to be wealthy, you also have to be healthy. To anybody that's new, my name is Joannazarach, and I do a daily money habits broadcast at 10 a.m. Central Time. I do it 7 days a week. It helps me think about financial goals. It helps me emphasize this idea of having a healthy money habit, and just share the message with people, and do it in these shorter periscopes. It actually inspires me to deepen my knowledge of finance so that I can bring that to you guys. So today I wanted to talk about this idea that I've had, and I think I've mentioned before, but this idea of building your financial scorecard, and some of the numbers that everybody should know. It's kind of like a health scorecard. If you have ever had a health assessment where they kind of take your measurements and they take your cholesterol and your weight, and you kind of get a sense of where you should be, like what's healthy. And I have the same idea around finances, right? It's to for everyone, first of all, but you have to know your numbers, right? So that's the idea. And I want to talk about sort of what types of information should you include on your financial scorecard. So, of course, I always talk about the big five levers, but the only way you know if you're applying the levers correctly, and those 5 levers are income, taxation, investing, big purchases, and risk, you only know if you're applying them correctly if you're getting the outcomes or the results that are actually appropriate, right? And there's a lot of dependencies on it, right? So people with a higher income should expect to have some of those numbers higher. So some of the numbers will be relative to your standing and your age and sort of where you are in your financial life. But here's some of the examples of things that you need to include. Monthly cash in. So what's your cash flow? So talk about cash flow a lot. What are you bringing in and what are you spending? You really need to know those numbers. And you don't need to know precisely, like to the final cent, but you have to have an idea. Like, are you earning $5,000 or $6,000, right? What are you bringing in? What's your expectation? Some people know those numbers very precisely because they're salaried, so they're very regular. If you're not regular, if you're a freelancer, you have to kind of set some sort of minimum. You say, you know what, at the very minimum, here's what I'm going to bring in, and everything else is kind of extra. It's cushion for those months that maybe you're not bringing as much. Cash out. Cash flow out is so important. You really need to get an idea of how much money your lifestyle requires. And by lifestyle, I mean like what your housing expenses are, your transportation, your food expenses, if you have children, your childcare expenses, if you have loans that you're repaying, right? How much of your cash goes out the door every month? And that actually is much more it's much more regular than people expect. It's much more predictable, especially once you've been established somewhere. You're, whether it might change if you change jobs or you move, but within like 3 to 6 months, your spending stabilizes. So you should know that number. So number in, number out. Net worth. I think it's so important that people know their net worth. It's kind of like the final, to me, it's like the final result. It's like you can create a lot of different interesting things in life and investments and maybe even businesses. But at the end of the day, like, what is it worth, right? And so I don't think people spend enough time thinking about it. Hi, Melissa. People don't spend enough time thinking about kind of what is their net worth and where they are. So cash in, cash out, their net worth, their marginal tax rate, right? Your marginal tax rate. Like, everyone should know what their marginal tax rate is, because that is it will trigger some of the decisions. And so you need to know that. You need to know your marginal tax rate. You need to get if you have investments, you need to know your rate of return, right? And whether it's taxable or not taxable, but what you really need to know is the sort of the final rate of return. So marginal tax rate of return, And the other things that I always talk about is to give you perspective, right? Is some of the things is like, so you have a kind of a snapshot where you are. So again, for anybody that's just joining, I'm talking about a scorecard for your financial life. Know your cash in, your monthly cash in, your monthly cash out. They typically stabilize your net worth, your marginal tax rate, your rate of return on all your investments. And then one of the things that I really encourage people to do is kind of create that in a context, right? So those numbers are going to be different depending how long have you been working, what your behavior has been, what is your saving habit, your spending habit, etc. Whether you've changed your relationship status, where you have kids, all of these things will play into it. So one of the things I do encourage people to do is really figure out how much they've earned in the past, like what has been your lifetime income. So that's also a number to go in your scorecard. Like in my lifetime, this is how much I've earned. If you have a spouse, have the same thing, right? And then also know how much of your investments are in various tax vehicles. And then look at your goals, right? Like understand what your goals are, because so your past can inform like where you should or could have been, right? So some people look at it and go, the lifetime income is a very revealing number, because you look at it and you're like, wow, I really generated a lot of income over my lifetime, but how much of it did you keep, right? It's more of a reflection than a judgment. And then, and also like, what's your goal, right? Like how much money do you expect to earn in the future, right? And again, that varies depending on where you are in life. And I think that's not something people do. They don't really look out into the future and say, okay, I'm going to expect to earn for the next 20 years, right? Like, so look at it. Look into the future and say, what's the cash flow? What's sort of the lifetime cash in or income potential that I have or my spouse has? Am I okay with it, right? Am I happy with it, right? Because it's going to impact your goal, right? If someone is, a salaried employee, and let's say they make $80,000 a year, and their particular industry tops out at 120, so inflation won't matter that much, because if you're getting cost of living increases, your cost of living is going to go up. So really, just take like today's numbers. Today's numbers are a good enough proxy for you to figure out, okay, over the next 20 years, if my ceiling's $120,000 and I have 20 more years to do it, you can calculate that, right? You can calculate the, it's 1.2 million and 1.2 million at most, but you're going to earn say 2.4 million. That's your income flow for the next 20 years. And then just say, how much of that am I realistic going to keep and when, right? Because timing matters. So that's why, it's not just the goals. Like, people have goals that are too vague. You have to have goals that are specific. And then you need to figure out, how are you going to meet that goal? Through investing, through taxes, through income. And I think that's, again, it's not to be judgmental, it's just to be realistic. So those are the ideas behind a financial scorecard. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm actually going to put together a scorecard and show you what I mean by that, right? What are the different components? Again, sort of the cash in, cash out, because I've been thinking about it in my head, and I need to put it into a spreadsheet where you can look at that. And the ultimate thing will be to put that, no, I'm not from Russia, but I'm from Poland originally. I'm in the US now. And so get your numbers in context. And I think that's really the most difficult thing that people struggle with. Where should you be given your, well, I'm not. And where should you be where it doesn't, in terms of, so me on TV, I haven't been on TV. If you are, in different contexts, right? So people with different circumstances will end up in different sort of scorecard. But I think that's the hardest thing for people to really get a sense of, how am I doing versus where could I be, right? And that's the call to action in my view. Like, where could you have been, or where could you go given your circumstances? And one of the things that I talk to people about is like, okay, given your circumstances, you're really struggling, and you either need to increase your income or you need to decrease your expenses. And that's a hard message for some people to hear, but it's like, but you're not limited, right? Like it's not over. Like it's not over for anybody, right? And I think that's like just really getting context around it, giving yourself a scorecard and doing that. Anyway, tomorrow I'm going to put together a spreadsheet and kind of give you an idea what I mean by that scorecard and what goes in it, because I've sketched it out before and I need to put it in a spreadsheet. And we'll go through it again and say, look, these are the things, these are the components of the scorecard. Why are they important? Where could you be or where should you be? It's something for yourself. And then if you do it once a year, right, like you do the scorecard and you say, okay, here's what I've changed to give me a sense of progress, and here is why I've gotten to where I've gotten. You know, here's the changes I made to create that difference or the goal that I've wanted. So thank you for joining, Melissa. Thanks for being here. It's not been a lot of people on the Periscopes. Apparently notifications aren't going out or something like that. Anyhow, maybe people are just over it. So that's the idea. I will put that together tomorrow. We'll go through that, and I encourage everybody to have that financial scorecard, and then just really, it's really kind of have a better sense of control when it comes to money versus the usual emotions that come with money when it's anxiety, unknowns, of being scared of the math, not understanding the concepts. And time and again, once again, I talked to several people yesterday. One was a group meeting, and another was just a one-on-one where women are not well equipped or don't feel well equipped to understand their financial situation, and it's more so when they're married, because there's a dependency there, and then there is a lack of communication, right? Or just like there was some even role expectation, and I had a woman where she's like, I gave him a job, right? This is yet another one. I talked to this woman. She's like, I gave him a job. My spouse has a business. I just really don't understand where we are financially, and I really feel like I need to know more. And he won't talk to me about it, and she feels like she doesn't have the information. So I encourage her to open a mint.com account to just really get the conversation started, to get an idea of her net worth. But it's a theme I'm hearing more and more. And it's just like, I didn't realize, like, someone who's been in control of their money my entire life, I'm just not aware that that's kind of the barriers that women face. And I do think it's even more prevalent when they are married. And so I think that there is a lot to be said about teaching women to take more control of their money, and not whether or not they're with a partner or just by themselves, and teaching them financial concepts. So with that being said, I do want to cover something this afternoon at 5 o'clock. One of the questions that came up yesterday in the group was 529 plans, and actually not the contribution, but what happens if the kids don't use up their 529 plan money, and like the penalties. And it's just like this perception that like it's like such a horrible thing. And I'm actually going to do the math and talk to it. It's going to be like Money Matters 202 at 5 o'clock Central, where I'll talk about what happens to the 529 money if you don't use it for education. Because and also, as you know, I have it has its place in a sequence of actions you should take. And people kind of haphazardly do 529s before they've gotten all the other ducks in a row. But if you are in a position of 529, then trying to help people understand what happens to their money. So I'm gonna cover that. The remnants of 529 plans at 5 o'clock today on Money Matters 202, because I feel like it's a little bit more advanced topic, but it's an important topic. And because I have a 529 plan, I'm kind of curious. What are the tax penalties? What's the pros and cons, and what are the actual numbers behind the laws and the rules that will continue to change, by the way, as we all know. These rules are not written in stone, people. These tax laws are not permanent. And so we're going to talk about, in today's situations, current tax law, what happens to the 529 money when your child no longer needs it for college. So thank you. And if I see you this afternoon, great. If not, tomorrow, 10 a.m., I'll be here every day. Okay, bye.